Welcome to another episode of TalkRadio.GOP. You know, what we like to do is talk to Republican leaders from around the country and not only talk about politics, but talk about their lifestyle, about their family, and everything's going on in their lives, because sometimes that's a bonus and that really gets kind of shoved aside. Today's guest is Victor Smith, and Victor is a principal at Bose Public Affairs, as well as the new national committeeman from the Republican Party of state of Indiana.
Well, first, Senator, thanks for having me on your show. What an honor. I was surprised, so humbled and surprised. Thank you. It's clearly an honor, not something that I was expecting, not something that I was pursuing. But I'm told, when called to serve, you say yes. The party is so important for many reasons, and has provided such great leadership direction for our state, which has manifested itself into how the state's doing. Always room for improvement for sure. But to be part of that is an honor. A couple things that you want to maybe try to keep as North Stars as you do that is to serve our state, and specifically the Indiana Republican Party and the state committee, and our governor, now and in the future. That's the first thing. So to provide a good representative, an honorable representative for the RNC, Republican National Committee. And then secondly is to serve our party by supporting the party's both state and national platforms, contributing to those and then supporting them, as we like to do. And I think upholding principles of small government, fiscal responsibility, freedom and opportunity. I think the basic North Stars that we as a party espouse. So it's really going to be keeping an eye on those North Star issues, Jim.
Victor, I've always known you as somebody that has a public heart. You worked for the Pence administration for 4 years in all things economic development with the Department of Commerce and the IEDC, the Indiana Economic Development Corporation. But many people don't know that the Smith family has a real soft spot in their heart for those that are in recovery. And talk to us a little bit about how you and Kathleen and the kids spend your time and your treasure helping others.
Well, Jim, thanks for bringing that up. And that is such a core piece of who we are. The household that I was brought up in, my dad, Van Smith, who's 95 years old, doing great. Early on, he always said unapologetically, he wanted to do well so he can do good. And that truly has carried on. It's how I saw men of honor and men of integrity act when I was a kid. And he's always been the one I wanted to emulate. And that was easily carried over into our life now as Kathleen and I as a couple. We've adopted a couple things. We always like to have a balance in our life of service work, and not just be focused on not just your job, not just kids, but it's rooted in faith, community, family, and so we try to have our time allocated accordingly. So you put your time where your mouth is, right? And so because of that, we've adopted some things that mean something mean something to us, that touch us. For me personally, it's been Catholic University, a university where I went to law school. I went to Colgate University undergrad, but I did my law school in Washington, D.C. at the Catholic University of America, which is the Bishop's University in the United States. So it's a particularly important university among Catholic universities in the United States. And then the local piece is a couple different organizations, Progress House and also Pathways to Recovery, which provide a sober living environment to people that are really just trying to conclude a chapter of their life. They've decided to make a change, which is exciting, and sometimes they need some encouragement and the means to go launch that new way of life. And we have invested both time and treasure in providing our help our tailwind to those people that have had the courage to make that decision. So those are things that that immediately come to me to share.
Okay. Victor, your wife is just an incredible human being, Kathleen. And as I understand it, she went back to school. She has the toughest job in healthcare today. If you would give us, just our audience, just a little idea of what she's done and what she does and what she's going to do, because she's a special person.
She is. And thanks for bringing it up. So my best friend, Kathleen, and by the way, we just 2 days ago celebrated our 29th wedding anniversary. So it's great. She's awesome. And we just started this new great empty nester chapter in our life with our youngest just going away to college. So it's been fun redefining that relationship. It's been great. Yeah, Kathleen had the most important job in the house. She was a stay-at-home mom of our 3 children. Was there, just like any mom would be, any loving mom would be. She's born and raised in North Carolina. She's actually born in Baltimore, raised in North Carolina. She's an ACC girl, so she went to NC State undergrad. When it was time for her to go back to school after our youngest was finished elementary school, she went back and got a master's at Wake Forest. So she stayed an ACC girl. And she got a master's in, she's a licensed mental health counselor is what she is now. So she went through that schooling, got her hours in, and passed the full licensure here in the state. She started with Catholic Charities for the first few years and really enjoyed that. Was also something called Brooks Place is where she spent a lot of time, if you know anything about that. And other just great organizations, touch a lot of people. In her heart, she really always wanted to work with cancer patients. Kathleen's dad passed away of cancer when she was a freshman in college. So really in those early forming years. And I think she always harkens back about maybe not having a resource, and I think wanting to be there for her mom as a resource. And it's always been on her heart that's an area where I think she could plug in and maybe help people in that very difficult time, kind of stage 4 cancer patient. And she also works with families. So she's seen it both sides. So she does that. She's a fantastic person. She's the kind of person that her high school friends, her college roommates, people early on in careers, Kathleen is the person that people call to say, hey, can I have a minute? Can I have an hour? And she's on the phone a lot. She's on Zooms a lot with people that have littered the whole history of her life, because they call her to listen and provide, what do you think about that? What should I be thinking about? What am I missing here? She's always the person that people call to kind of maybe just listen to and maybe get some good advice. I found that to be true as well. So she's great.
Victor, you were born in a household with an outstanding man as a father, but also as a business icon, a corporate icon in the state of Indiana. And everybody knows Van P. Smith. And but you spent a lot of time, I recall 17 years out in California, in Silicon Valley. Would you tell our audience just a little bit about your experience there and why you came back here?
Sure. So right after law school, my new bride and I had an offer from a company that was primarily, its history was in the jet engine industry, but it was getting into the emerging semiconductor equipment industry in the early 90s there. And so we said yes. And so as 2 newlyweds went out to the Bay Area, we were only going to stay just a couple of years and then come back home to really start our family. And then wouldn't you know, things just happened. So that started a chapter of my life, which is really exciting. I ended up working for an engineering company, grew that company substantially, and we served predominantly the capital equipment industry for semiconductor manufacturing. So we didn't make chips, but we really, I'll equate it to pizzas. We didn't make the pizzas, but we made the ovens that made the pizzas. And big companies like Applied Materials and Lam Research and KLA-Tencor, huge juggernaut companies, were customers of ours that we grew with handsomely during that time. I wish it were a nice, easy, smooth slope. It was not. The industry was, especially in its nascent days, Jim, was way up and way down. So the amplitude each year of changes was just, we call it sawtooth, and that's being nice. It was a very jagged sawtooth. So what it taught me, a couple things from a business standpoint, was cash management, and also staying really close to your customer. But the most important thing was people, right? So your people that you work with had to trust you, and you had to trust them. And so providing that mutual trust that you're equipped to do your job. It was my job as the CEO of that organization to make sure that the team had the proper tools. And if that were the equipment or the financial resources to get their job done, that was my team leader job. And everybody had clear roles and clear goals. That was really important for us. And I think that allowed us to survive through those crazy times. You think when an industry is just going, 17% compounded annual growth rate over the 2 decades, but that wasn't that wasn't an even slope. It was killer up and killer down. So it was really difficult to manage. So as things continued to grow, our client base, our customer base was very international, and they continued to want us to invest in other places in Asia, in Europe, in China, and increasingly we got pressure to do that. And frankly, that just was a pressure we didn't want to give into. It's not an area that we knew necessarily. It's not an area that we trusted in a legal sense, because rules seem to shift and change. We had been there many, 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 many times, lots of visits, and so that was really kind of the time we knew that it was time for an exit. And so based on the financial conditions, based on what we saw as a huge ramp ahead of us again, we wanted to provide our clients, our customers with another balance sheet that could do some of the international stuff that they wanted to do. And so we ended up selling that company to a very large multinational North American based contract manufacturing company, big, $40 billion company. So that was the right decision on behalf of the team members as well, to continue to grow in the space. And then it was, lo and behold, about 5 weeks later, my congressman, where I grew up in Muncie, was elected governor, and we had stayed in touch. And he had said, "Hey, what are you doing now?" I was 43 at the time, having run that company for 17 years there. And he said, "What are you doing now?" And I said, "I'm in this discernment mode." And he said, in good Mike Pence fashion, "I'd like you and Kathleen to pray about something, and then I'd like to have breakfast about that." And so we did just that. And we went and had breakfast with him. And lo and behold, he asked me to be his commerce secretary, which is just a job that I truly enjoyed. My wife, when I came home to her after having a one-on-one meeting with him, I just said, "Kathleen, this would use every aspect of my characteristics that I have that I know would just plug in from the business side of me, from the sales side of me, from the wanting to do new things side of me, from the learning." It was just something that I think would tug on all those little threads that I wanted tugged. It's the best darn decision that I made. Really had a lot of fun doing it, to be the number 2 sales guy behind the governor for the state of Indiana.
Victor, you talk a little bit about the IEDC, the Indiana Economic Development Corporation, and we all want Indiana to grow. We all know that jobs and industry have to come here to expand everything that we like about our state. Would you tell our audience how you were pretty much the second salesman for the state of Indiana as the chief at the IEDC, and what that meant to you, and how it's contributed to your life, number one, but 2, your role at Bose Public Affairs as a principal there?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Jim. Well, not to provide a history lesson, but the Commerce Department was done away with under Governor Daniels, and he created in 2005 something called the Indiana Economic Development Corporation, the IEDC. By statute, they kept the title Secretary of Commerce because people understood what that means. So the Secretary of Commerce by statute is the CEO of the IEDC. And that's a role that Governor Pence asked me to play, and I did. I always said there's so many great things that Indiana has to offer. We have such a great story. We just need to tell it bolder, louder, and more often. We tend to be fairly modest as Hoosiers, and that's okay. But doggone it, somebody needs to tell the story a little bit louder. So we began, as you recall, under Governor Daniels. They began some kind of fun. You remember the banners that were up on the roads going into Chicago? That's kind of where it started. Like Illinois, still Illinois. I love the one, caution, taxes triple in 3 miles as you're approaching the Illinois border, those kind of things. That's where we began having fun with the messaging. And then it actually has just continued to graduate. And if you look, the 4 years that I was there, we did a lot of international trips. We did a lot of regional trips. We did a lot of very targeted industry trips. We joined the Semiconductor Industry Association in my second year there. Got Ian Steff, who was the head of policy for the Semiconductor Industry Trade Association in Washington, D.C., which kind of set the seed for a lot of the semiconductor stuff so it's stuff that you begin the germination of that you're not going to get to yield the crops, but you certainly get to plant the seed and take great pride, and it's fun to do that. So we were urged on by then Governor Pence to kind of think boldly, to borrow a Governor Daniels thing, aim high, right? Or to Governor Holcomb, next level. So those types of thinking. So we began to go target specific industries that we wanted to grow within the state. Specifically as it relates to capital formation and what that means to the local tax base. And then certainly targeting those industries that have a predominantly higher than average wage, because if you're going to use tax dollars to do it, my test was I used to say all the time, what would the little old lady in Portland say about this, using her taxpayer dollars to do this? So that was always the thing. Is this a kind of return, or is this something that's worth those tax dollars? And so, targeting those industries, it's kind of shooting where the duck's going to be, right? That's where you're shooting for. That's the kind of stuff that we're going after. So that was something that we began to put in place and then go execute upon. And then Jimmy Schellinger behind me during Governor Holcomb's days, his first 4+ years, and then Chambers to follow, who did such a great job. Everybody just kind of continued to build on the shoulders of the people before you, and now just the mega success that we've seen in not only the size of deals, but we're touching lots of different parts of the state. Always keeping an eye on the average prevailing wage, using those state incentives targeted for those that are going to be helping the average, not anything that's going to be dilutive to the effort. So that's been really good. You asked about how that affects kind of what I'm doing now. So yes, as you mentioned, I am a principal of Bose Public Affairs Group. I'm also a partner at the law firm of Bose McKinney and Evans, where I chair the site selection practice group. So we have a whole group of folks that are on the team. Lots of nationally known folks that are on the team, really good. So companies will actually hire us to, on their behalf, run a multi-state site selection process and do those negotiations with states and local governments about where they might want to go. And that includes, looking at one location versus another. And where we have to maintain we're agnostic. We always love it when Indiana's in play. But we have to be agnostic. But it also provides a really good platform, I'll tell you, for us to see kind of best practices, what's going on out there, because we're dealing with, I think we're in 14 different states right now. We have 30 some active projects. So we're in 14 states right now in the projects that we're dealing with on big scale projects. So, 4 or 5 of the big national semiconductor kind of firms that we're dealing with. One of which is going up to Purdue, that's really exciting. But it really provides an opportunity. I've kind of stayed in that market. I really so thoroughly enjoyed that, that I'm still in that market, just in another role now.
Victor, we've got the 2024 campaign. What's going to happen?
Braun's going to be elected governor. Next paragraph. I think not only is he a really strong candidate, I think under his leadership, we're going to continue to advance the state of Indiana through his commitment to job creation, addressing affordable health care, which is really important to him, tackling energy costs and availability and reliability, which are issues that we want to make sure we understand and solve long term. Infrastructure, always going to be important, continually will be important to that governor, and public safety. I mean, there are a litany of other things, but I'll say that right off the bat. As a successful businessman, very successful businessman, he's demonstrated time and time his ability to navigate complex challenges and just deliver results. Look at his company as the testament, right? It's a, you know, he really did. He built a gem, and he is very much a fiscal conservative. Very much a fiscal conservative, and I think it's going to be focused on those issues. I think some have said, is he going to do X, Y, Z, kind of outside of the fray? And I think he's going to be right down the middle of the fairway, fiscally conservative. His platform is freedom and opportunity, and all that means. And you can't really throw eggs at freedom and opportunity if that's your platform. And that's really where he's going to be as probably the most fiscally conservative governor that we will see in our time.
Thank you, Victor, for sitting with us and talking about your life today.
Great, Jim. Honored for the invitation.